I love you. I'm Sai. Sai in the Vine. Woo woo. Brother of Christ. Always with my brother. My best friend, loving him. Well, my best friend besides for Abba Father, of course. How are you? Has it been a crazy day for you? Has it been just a wild, crazy day? It's been a pretty good day for me, actually. But, how about you? How's your day been going? Hopefully good. Hopefully wonderful. Hopefully you spent the day with God, talking to Him. Getting loved by Him. Getting cuddled by God. Getting comforted. That's what He wants. He wants to comfort. You know, that's the whole point in Christ. Maybe you need to work on that. Maybe you need to work on receiving that comfort from God. What do you need to work on? Is there anything right now that God is wanting you to work on, to focus on? Is there any particular thing going on in your life that is proving to be difficult, and so that's, an area that you need to work on? Because that's usually what we need to work on if we're going through something difficult, something that's proven to be a challenge. Then we might need to focus on that. We might need to focus on that in prayer. That we really need to make goals with God. And, one way that we make goals is by knowing what we're needing to work on in the moment. And we all, have different things at different times that we need to focus on. And we need to focus. And this reminds me of my other video that I made about focusing. Focus. Feed on God's Word. And then comes the order of operations, which is PEMDAS. And the P was pray. And then the E was emulate Christ. And then the next one, M, was make goals. So we need to make goals with God. And our goals will change over time. Our goals, can be various goals throughout the day. Just depending on what's going on and what we need and what we're working through and what God is saying to us. So we need to be making goals every day, maybe writing them down, but I think the main part of having goals is being able to focus and think about what's going on, what we need to be working on, where is God guiding me and leading me, showing me that I need to focus in that area. And right now, I see in this world that is so cruel and people are so rude. I think sometimes we might need to work on just having a thicker skin, because people are just so ugly and rude, and if we let them get to us, then that's just going to be, spiritually damaging for us. So we really have to be focused on not letting people get to us and just not ever thinking about the stupid and ugly things that people say. Just, letting everything go and just not even giving it a second thought if a person is being hateful. I think one thing we need to work on is reinforcing our, our studies and our knowledge in God's Word, because, when you have times where things are pretty good and things are pretty laid back and you can focus on God's Word and learn and memorize scriptures, like, it's so important to do that to the best of your ability, just to prepare yourself for when tribulation might come. And maybe, right now you're needing to, remember now all the lessons you've learned in the past, and, making sure to call those things to mind when you're in a tribulation period. Oh yeah, I wanted to read about, I really wanted to read about, Joseph, because, he just went through such terrible tribulations. He was treated so terribly by his jealous brothers, and he never deserved that. So I just wanted to talk about, what he went through, and kind of remember how difficult, how difficult it was for him. He was treated badly, because of other people's jealousy. And, what did he do? Let's read, I'll read it verse, in chapter 37, start reading about Jacob's dreams. I'm reading this in the Christian Standard Bible. Joseph's dreams says Jacob lived in the land where his father had stayed, the land of Canaan. These are the family records of Jacob. At 17 years of age, Joseph tended sheep with his brothers. The young man was working with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives, and he brought a bad report about them to their father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than his other sons, because Joseph was a son born to him in his old age, and he made a robe of many colors for him. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not bring themselves to speak peaceably to him. Now, we need to remember this, that his brothers, Joseph's brothers, couldn't bring themselves to speak peaceably to him. And why? It was through no fault of his own. It was because his father favored him. Does that sound familiar? When your father favors you, other people won't be able to speak peaceably to you. You might not understand that. You might wonder why. Why are people saying cruel things? Why are people attacking me? when your father has a special love for you and makes you a robe of many colors and takes care of you, then other people are going to hate you. And that hatred is not your fault. Just like the hatred that Joseph's brothers had for him, it wasn't his fault. They could not speak peaceably to him. And I've heard plenty of people, almost everyone who ever talks about this story, they talk about how Joseph shouldn't have said his dreams. He shouldn't have said things the way he said it. But the truth of the matter is, it didn't matter what he said. His brothers already hated him. And interestingly, his dad, comes down on him, Israel comes down on him and says, oh, now we're going to bow to you. Even he gets in on it. But the truth is, it has nothing to do with that. The reason that they hate Joseph has nothing to do with his dreams. Not really. The dreams make them extra angry because they can see that Joseph has, he has this gift of dreams, and he has the confidence to say what he dreamt. But this was from way back. This was from way back, and none of it was Joseph's fault, actually. It was Israel for favoring one child over the others, which is a terrible idea. And then, of course, the brothers for hating Joseph, for blaming him, even though he was only a child. And now he's 17. He's growing up, and he's probably getting a little more intimidating. They've always hated him, but now he's becoming just a powerful person because he's so favored. He's favored by his father and God. So let's read what happens next in verse 5. Then Joseph had a dream. When he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, "Listen to this dream I had. And there we were, finding sheaves of grain in the field. Suddenly my sheaf stood up, and your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf." "Are you really going to reign over us?" his brothers asked him. "Are you really going to rule us?" So they hated him even more because of his dream and what he had said. But they hated him because of his dream and what he said. But they'd already hated him before, and they would have hated him. They hated him no matter what. But when people say he shouldn't have said this, he shouldn't have said his dream. But really, he had to say his dream. He was a prophet, and he had a prophecy, and he had to tell people, and he definitely had to tell the people, that the dream concerned, which was his family. Genesis 42. Oh, okay, I guess that's just going to show us later when the famine comes. Joseph was in charge of the country. He sold grain to all its people. His brothers came and bowed down before him with their faces to the ground. When Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them, and he treated them like strangers and spoke harshly to them. "Where do you come from?" "From the land of Canaan to buy food," they replied. Interesting. So, yeah. It's just saying. So that's a 6, 7 big time. Because that's what happens, when we're put in this position. 42 is a 6, 7, and then verses 6 and 7 of Genesis 42. is the culmination of all this that happened. His brothers come and they bow down to him. Just like the prophecy. That's the prophecy fulfilled. That's why it's 6-7, 6-7. But then he treated them like strangers and treated them harshly, pretending not to know them. I wonder if that felt, that probably felt pretty good. But yeah. Yeah, they had to go through some stress here because of what they did to Joseph. But in the end, it was all just the fulfillment of prophecy and the fulfillment of God's will in Joseph's life. God's desire to bless Joseph and have him to be a part of, of bringing about all the prophecy. So that's how it is. That's what happens when people are hateful and rude and ugly to us. What's happening is God's actually working out His purpose in our life, and we just have to, we have to do what Joseph did in this situation, which would, thrive. We have to thrive wherever we are, wherever we end up. We have to do our best. We have to serve God wherever we are. So verse 8 says, are you really going to reign over us? His brothers asked him, are you really going to rule us? So they hated him even more because of his dream and what he had said. Then he had another dream and told it to his brothers. And some people hear again, they say, oh, Joseph, he was bragging. No, he was prophesying. He absolutely had to share these dreams. These were decrees. This was God telling Joseph the future. So, and at the same time, kind of like in chapter 42, verses 6 and 7, it probably kind of felt good because, can you imagine how Joseph was really treated by, all of his brothers? All of his brothers hated him. And the fact that his father loved him did not make up for that cruelty and abuse. It still hurt. Verse 9 says, then he had another dream and told it to his brothers. Look, he said, I had another dream, and this time the sun, moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to me. He told his father and brothers, and his father rebuked him. What kind of dream is this that you have had? He said. Am I and your mother and your brothers really going to come and bow down to the ground before you? His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. So, the brothers were jealous. Of course, Israel wasn't jealous. It just says he kept the matter in mind. So even though he did rebuke Joseph, that was probably just, for Joseph's brothers' benefit. I wouldn't doubt if that was just to try to appease them, try to appease their murderous anger. He had to know, this was culminating, this was a problem. And he probably knew that he had caused it a little bit as well. Joseph sold into slavery. His brothers had gone to pasture their father's flocks at Shechem. Israel said to Joseph, your brothers, are pasturing the flocks at Shechem. Get ready, I'm sending you to them. I'm ready, Joseph replied. So this is interesting. And this, I think, just goes to show Joseph's character. We know. We already know what happens in the future. Joseph has excellent character. But here it's showing that his father, after all this, after his brothers hating him... Hi, Larry! Hello! How are you? Yay! 2 for $1 Special. Yeah, I felt like I needed to get on here. I really felt like I needed to get on here tonight. Oh, okay, nice. Gonna enjoy some scriptures. Help you wind down after the day. Did you have a good day? It was good. Thanks for asking. Hey. I'm glad you had a good day. I'm glad you're on here. Yay. Hello, hello. So what I was talking about tonight was actually, I was talking about like what we need to be focusing on right now, like in whatever particular season we are in our lives. Like for instance, you know, you may be in a season where you're just needing to soak up God's word, you know, and get stronger and just learn, you know, just learn about His love and His will, and just become confident and strong that way, so that you can like prepare for anything that's coming. You know, kind of like when Christ was in the wilderness, and he knew, like he knew that he was ready. And sometimes we have seasons where we're blessed with that time where we can be getting ready. And like I was saying, for me, it's like remembering, like right now I'm in a time where I'm just like, there's some difficult things going on, and I need to remember, you know, everything that I've stored up. You know, kind of like what I was reading in Genesis. I'm reading about Joseph, you know, and how he stored up all of the blessings and things that were coming in, storing them up to use them later when, you know, when the hard times hit. That's how we had to be with God's word sometimes. Whenever it's a time where we can just like relax and learn as much as we possibly can, we need to do that. But then at other times we need to, you know, make sure we're tapping into that and not getting distracted by all the difficulties. And I was also thinking about sometimes, you know, that the difficulty in our life may be like we may need to be working on like toughening ourselves up, becoming stronger, and just becoming people who, when, you know, like we live in a world where people are extremely rude and mean, and we may be in a place where we're having to learn to just like let things go, let mean things that people say go. And, you know, just like, how do we do that? How do we focus on just being strong and doing God's will, and, you know, just letting haters and people who speak in an ugly way, you know, like just letting them go. That's a thing that people have to learn. And it reminded me of Joseph. And I was just reading about how, you know, how he, in his own home, faced a lot of hatred. And, you know, and none of that was his fault. Like it was talking about here that, you know, his brothers, in chapter 37, in Genesis chapter 37, verse 4, his brothers, you know, it says they hated him so much they couldn't even speak peaceably to him because they saw that their father loved Joseph more. And I was making the connection that we're kind of like that as well. Like when people see how our Father favors us, sometimes people can get really hateful and really cruel and want to bring us down, want to really harm us because they see that favor in our lives, And I mean, even though of course it's something anyone can have, but it's interesting how people, they reject God, and then they get angry at people who are very, very blessed by Him. And of course God's going to bless people who actually put the effort into that relationship. So I was thinking, I would read about Joseph and his experience to maybe help us to, have an example that we can look to. Because if we're in this world, we're coming into contact with Satan's world. We're coming in contact with Satan's children. And, they naturally hate God's children, just like Joseph's brothers hated him. And then it says he had his dream, and they hated him even more. And I was talking about how, really, when he had that dream and he told that dream, he was being faithful. He wasn't being disrespectful to his brothers or his family. That dream was a prophecy, and he had to tell the people about whom the prophecy was. He couldn't hold, prophet can't not do what God wants them to do just because they know that the people that they're speaking to hate them. He knows his brothers hate him, but he still has to be faithful, and he has to say the dream, and it's a warning. And even if he doesn't necessarily know at the moment, exactly what it means, but I kind of think he knows what it means, and I'm not gonna lie, I think he probably gets a little something out of it, yeah, you guys are gonna basically bow down to me. He knows it's true. He doesn't really know how it's going to happen, but... And then I was reading verse 12, where Joseph is sold into slavery, and it says, his brothers had gone to pasture their father's flocks at Shechem. Israel said to Joseph, your brothers, are pasturing the flocks at Shechem. Get ready. I'm sending you to them. And Joseph says, I'm ready. And that was when you came in. I was just saying how that just shows Joseph's character, that even through all of this, and even through him prophesying and doing God's will, and them hating him even more for it, and his father even rebuking him, he still is cooperative and does the right thing, and listens to his father. He's obedient. This guy, we can see why God favors Joseph so much. And he's a good kid, a really good kid. So verse 14 says, then Israel said to him, go and see how your brothers and the flocks are doing, and bring word back to me. So he sent him from the Hebron valley, and he went to Shechem. A man found him there wandering in the field and asked him, what are you looking for? I'm looking for my brothers, Joseph said. Can you tell me where they are pasturing their flocks? They're moved on from here, the man said. I heard them say, let's go to Dothan. So Joseph set out after his brothers and found them at Dothan. They saw him in the distance, and before he had reached them, they plotted to kill him. They said one to another, oh, look, here comes that dream expert. Oh man, that's the kind of things people, look at there comes that person that thinks they're special. Oh, look at that. Look at little Miss Special, look at little Mr. Favored by God. Oof, let's put them in their place, they think. That's what they think. So now, come on, let's kill him and throw him into one of the pits. we can say that a vicious animal ate him. Oh, man, they're talking about their little brother. How wicked. Then we'll see what becomes of his dreams. But then I was saying earlier, too, like when you think of this hatred that they had for Joseph, even though sadly they are projecting all of this hatred onto Joseph, like Joseph's the bad person, that's causing them to hurt. But the truth was, they were hurt because their father obviously favored Joseph in such a demonstrable way that, like, it's ridiculous. So, yeah, like, Israel made a mistake and actually kind of caused this situation. But, that's, parents do that. Parents make mistakes. And look at what a terrible situation it put Joseph in. I mean, I think that's really a lesson for parents. Like, you don't favor one child over the other. You love all of your children equally. You have to give each individual child what they need to be healthy. No one child gets, like, all the love and all the attention. And, of course, that's how God is with us. Like, none of us is a favorite. We come to Him and He loves us, each and every one of us, individually, exactly how we need. We might look at someone else and see their different life, and maybe we can be hurt a little bit if we compare. But the truth is, we can't really compare ourselves to other people. We can't compare how God treats other people because we don't know their circumstances. We don't even fully know our own circumstances. God knows our hearts. God knows what we need, and He knows our future. And so we really need to trust Him and not compare ourselves to other people, no matter how they're treated. But now, Joseph's brothers, I feel like they kind of had a legitimate reason to be jealous, although it is very sad how it worked out for poor Joseph. And I think that, when his father rebuked him, I think he was, like, seeing the hatred in Joseph's brothers and was like, I'd better, like, get onto Joseph a little bit. I'd better show them that I love them by getting onto Joseph. But that was a mistake as well, because that's not how you show people that you love someone. You don't, like, rebuke or punish one person you just show love and kindness to the people that you love. But all of this was before Christ. These are people just, they are just navigating this life. God is allowing them. I mean, God is guiding them. But, we're getting to see, like, the raw data of these behaviors and what happens, without Christ. And, of course, God is still guiding things. They roll the dice, but God determines where they fall. So Israel rolled the dice with these kids, and he tried his best. He tried his best to be a good parent, but yeah, he failed. He failed at this particular thing, and his brothers are murderously jealous. It's like the proverb that says jealousy is rottenness to the bones. It kills. It kills the person who's jealous. Their heart is rotting, and because they don't have Christ, they're going to project. They're going to project, and they're going to say, oh, it's this person I'm jealous of. It's this person that's making me so mad. They're the one that's hurting me. But it's all just projection, and there's no reason to ever be jealous. And verse 21 says, when Reuben heard this, he tried to save him from them. He said, let's not take his life. Reuben also said to them, don't shed blood. Throw him into this pit in the wilderness, but don't lay a hand on him, intending to rescue him from them and return him to his father. When Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped off Joseph's robe, the robe of many colors that he had on. Then they took him and threw him into the pit. The pit was empty, without water. I doubt Joseph was super surprised by this, because he knew they hated him. But he probably just thought they were being jerks and like, oh, what now? He had no idea what was about to come of him. They sat down to eat a meal, and when they looked up, there was a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead. Their camels were carrying aromatic gum, balsam, and resin, going down to Egypt. So they're carrying products to Egypt, and they're about to pick up a fresh product. Judah said to his brothers, "What do we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come on, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay a hand on him, for he is our brother, our own flesh." And his brothers agreed. When Midianite traders passed by, his brothers pulled Joseph out of the pit and sold him for 20 pieces of silver to the Ishmaelites, who took Joseph to Egypt. When Reuben returned to the pit and saw that Joseph was not there, he tore his clothes. He went back to his brothers and said, "The boy is gone. What am I going to do?" So they took Joseph's robe, slaughtered a male goat, and dipped the robe in its blood. They sent the robe of many colors to their father and said, "We found this. Examine it. Is it your son's robe or not?" His father recognized it. "It is my son's robe," he said. "A vicious animal has devoured him. Joseph has been torn to pieces." Then Jacob tore his clothes, put sackcloth around his waist, and mourned for his son many days. All his sons and daughters tried to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. "No," he said, "I will go down to Sheol to my son, mourning." And his father wept for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites sold Joseph in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh and the captain of the guards. So Joseph's on his way to live in Potiphar's house. All because his father had favored him to the point where all of his brothers hated him. And Joseph did not do anything wrong. And sometimes when we find ourselves in really, really difficult situations or people are being mean to us, we might think, like, what did I do wrong? But the truth is, all that is just projection. All that evil comes from the heart and the wicked deeds and the wicked thoughts of the people from whence they come. And so our job is, well, we'll see. I'm going to read what happens to Joseph in Potiphar's house and all of that. I guess I'll go ahead and read chapter 38 because it's just the next chapter. And it's pretty interesting, although it doesn't really have anything to do with what I'm talking about. It does, it's great. I might can whittle out something. Okay, so now we're going to read about Judah and Tamar. Chapter 38. It says, "At that time Judah left his brothers and settled near an Adullamite named Hira. There Judah saw the daughter of a Canaanite named Shua. He took her as a wife and slept with her. She conceived and gave birth to a son, and he named him She conceived again, gave birth to a son, and named him Onan. She gave birth to another son and named him Shelah. It was at Chezib that she gave birth to him. Judah got a wife for his firstborn, and her name was Tamar. Now Judah's firstborn, was evil in the Lord's sight, and the Lord put him to death. Then Judah said to Onan, Sleep with your brother's wife, perform your duty as your brother-in-law, and produce offspring for your brother. But Onan knew that the offspring would not be his, so whenever he slept with his brother's wife, he released his semen on the ground, so that he would not produce offspring for his brother. What he did was evil in the Lord's sight, so he put him to death also. It's just wow. Then Judah said to his daughter-in-law Tamar, "Remain a widow in your father's house until my son Shelah grows up," for he thought he might die too like his brothers. So Tamar went to live in her father's house. After a long time, Judah's wife, the daughter of Shua, died. When Judah had finished mourning, he and his friend Hira the Adullamite went up to Timnah to his sheep shearers. Tamar was told, "Your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear the sheep." Don't you fuss. You got up on my desk. You got up on my desk, you pretty baby. How did you get up on my desk? How did you get up on my desk, you pretty little thing? You don't like this story? She doesn't like this salacious story. It's too much for her little ears. It's too much for her little virgin ears. Oh. So yes, so far, this poor woman, she gets married, and then her husband dies without offspring, and so she still needs to have her husband's offspring because, you know, he still needs to have an inheritance. So that's pretty important for like every tribe, every person to have their offspring so they can have their inheritance. Well, I can still read this. So Tamar was told, "Your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear his sheep." So she took off her widow's clothes, veiled her face, covered herself, and sat at the entrance of Enaim, which is on the way to Timnah. For she saw that, though Shelah had grown up, she had not been given to him as a wife. When Judah saw her. Now this just shows just how much, man, how marriage just differed so much in their culture. Like, she just, you know, it really was just like a business arrangement. I mean, I'm sure it was very, you know, nice when you're married and you have a partner. But, yeah, like, people really didn't marry for love. I mean, well, they probably loved their fellow Jewish person, you know, they love their tribe, probably. But, yeah, I mean, she's just waiting for this random guy to grow up, you know, that she doesn't really know him, but, I mean, that's wild. Like, when we think about God's Word and when we think about the things that happened, I think it's really important to remember that there's just a lot we're never going to understand about how people lived then, how they thought and how they felt. You can't really judge people, you know, by the things that they did and the way that they lived then, because, yeah, it was a whole different thing. But, so she was waiting, for, her father-in-law to come by, and when he saw her, he thought she was a prostitute, for she had covered her face. He went over to her and said, "Come, let me sleep with you," for he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. Yeah, you're not supposed to sleep with your daughter-in-law, according to the law. these things happened amongst these people. They were wrong. Very, very wrong, but they, they weren't under the law. They weren't. They were just doing the best they could with what they had and with the society that they had created, really, the culture and the society that God allowed them to create their own society. And He worked with that. He worked with what humans were, just like us. He works with what we are. We have to go to Him as we are. He works with us not like how someone else is. He works with us how we are, how we've developed, how we've chosen to live, and who we've chosen to become. He doesn't just completely want us to put on some facade and become something completely different than what we are. No, He's working with us as we are, just like He worked with Israel. He worked with the tribes. He worked with the 12 tribes. Just like this, all these crazy things happening. So he didn't know that she was his daughter-in-law, and he slept with her, and then he didn't have, money, so he gave her, his signet ring, and maybe his staff, and he left. And then, of course, she gets pregnant, and so it gets back to him, hey, your daughter-in-law is pregnant, she's played the whore, and he's like, oh, we're about to, whatever, stone her, whatever the consequence was. I think it was stoning or something. So she comes or they go to her, or whatever, something happens, and she's confronted, and then she produces his ring and his staff, and then, oh, it's all okay. He just lets it go. He's like, oh, he said she's been more, what was it that he said? She's been more righteous than I have. Which, in a way, it's true, I guess. Because he was her close relation, and he wasn't, upholding his end of the bargain, and it was, it was important to her. That was what was important. It was the business deal, the contract that they had, that, when families came together, they had a contract, and the important thing for her, she didn't want to be barren. She needed to have children. That was her purpose. It's kind of what women's purpose was, to make a good match, be a good, clean woman, and have a husband, and have little children. Bring the next generation into the Jewish society. Okay, now I got to turn the page because I've told the story, and now I want to get back to Joseph. And this little thing, I love her so much. Oh, my pumpkin, my sweet baby. Well, okay, here's what I'll do. I'll start reading it in my KJV, because she is Little Miss. Little Miss gonna do whatever she wants. Let's see, what chapter was that? 38? So I explained, oh yeah, and then she has twins, interestingly enough. And, actually, like Esau and Jacob, the twins are, they're fighting in her womb. Yeah, it says, and twins were in her womb, and it came to pass when she travailed, that the one put out his hand, and the midwife took and bound upon his hand a scarlet thread, saying, This came out first. And it came to pass, as he drew back his hand, that behold, his brother came out. And she said, How hast thou broken forth? This breach be upon thee. Therefore his name was called Pharez. And afterward came out his brother, that had the scarlet thread upon his hand, and his name was called Zara. Okay, so now chapter 39, we're going to get back to Joseph's story. Let me see if I can get her. She's like the most valuable, she's the most valuable player here, guys. Sweet, innocent people. We gotta be considerate. We gotta be considerate of them. We gotta be considerate of everyone. Alright, let's read chapter 39 and see if we can get some more wisdom from Joseph's situation. It says, And Joseph was brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, brought him at the hands of the Ishmaelites, which had brought him down thither. And the Lord was with Joseph, and he was a prosperous man, and he was in the house of his master the Egyptian. And his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all that he did prosper in his hand. And Joseph found grace in his sight, and he served him, and he made him overseer over his house, and all that he had he put into his hand. And it came to pass, from the time that he had made him overseer in his house and over all that he had, that the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. And the blessing of the Lord was upon all that he had in the house and in the field. I said Jacob's sake, but it said Joseph, but it was also for Jacob's sake. And he left all that he had in Joseph's hand, and he knew not aught he had, save the bread which he did eat. And Joseph was a goodly person and well favored. So yeah, here's our answer of what Joseph does after facing all of that hatred and abuse and really probably the terror, absolute terror of being a 17-year-old boy and being sold into slavery and going to a foreign country where you do not know their customs, you do not know their ways. There he is, a stranger in a strange land, and he stays faithful. After all that, he does not lose faith. He just keeps serving God, and he keeps doing his best, and he just keeps those lines of communication open, and he keeps pleasing God all the while. And so God just keeps blessing Joseph and even blessing the households in which Joseph lives. And he's running this household. Like that's amazing. Like, he's a foreigner, he's a stranger in a foreign land, and he's running this household. Like, that's an amazing blessing. Like, people know, smart people know when someone's blessed by God, and they're gonna want to use that good, honest kid. Joseph was just a good, honest kid, and it said that he was goodly and well favored, so he was growing strong and good looking. Oh, wow. And of course, this is a 6'7". So he was so well favored, He was good looking. And so 6'7", his master's wife, who was kind of a sleaze, she cast her eyes upon Joseph, and she said, "Lie with me." But here we see, there again, Joseph's beautiful character. He never lets go of his beautiful character. He refused. And I bet she wasn't bad looking either, But he was just like, no, my master. wotteth not what is with me in the house, and he hath committeth all that he hath to my hand. There is none greater in this house than I, neither hath he kept back anything from me but thee, because thou art his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness, and sin against God? I mean, she was so wicked because when you think about it, like, Potiphar was really angry and punishes Joseph because he thinks Joseph did this thing. So even in Egypt, it was, committing adultery, or at least a man trying to sleep with another man's wife, he went to prison over it. And maybe that was because he was a foreigner, though. But he wasn't going to sin against God. It didn't matter really what the law was there. And verse 10 says, And it came to pass as she spake to Joseph day by day, that he hearkened not unto her to lie by her, or to be with her. And it came to pass about this time that Joseph went into the house to do his business, and there was none of the men of the house there within. And she caught him by his garment, saying, Lie with me. And he left his garment in her hand, and fled, and got him out. And it came to pass, when she saw that he had left his garment in her hand, and was fled forth, that she called unto the men of her house, and spake unto them, saying, See, he hath brought in an Hebrew unto us to mock us. He came in unto me to lie with me, and I cried with a loud voice. And it came to pass, when he heard that I lifted up my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me and fled, and got him out. And she laid up his garment by her until his Lord came home. And she spake unto him according to these words, saying, The Hebrew servant which thou hast brought unto us came in unto me to mock me. And it came to pass, as I lifted up my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me and fled out. And it came to pass, when his master heard the words of his wife, which she spake unto him, saying, After this manner did thy servant to me, that his wrath was kindled. And Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, a place where the king's prisoners were bound, and he was there in the prison. Now Joseph, being beautiful and pure and attractive, this woman wanted to have her way with him. And here, in my opinion, is another example of projection. She probably felt mocked because she was a woman who was used to getting whatever she wanted. This was a powerful woman, and Joseph was just a lowly slave. And, she's saying Joseph is mocking us. But the truth is, she feels mocked because she was denied what she wanted, and that hurt her pride. So here's Joseph again, hurting someone's pride, completely innocently. It's not his fault at all, but yet, here he is, he's in trouble. He's in big trouble. He had a safe place. He landed on his feet. God blessed him where he was, but now here, this is happening again. And, you have to wonder, Joseph was probably pretty scared. He's never been imprisoned before. He's never been in prison. He's been a slave, but he's actually been treated pretty well. In Potiphar's house, he's actually become a powerful person. So, yeah, it makes me wonder, was he like scared or panicked, or was he just like, been here before, and completely confident. I'm sure he was completely confident, even if he was a little scared because, of not knowing where he was going to be going, and being treated like that is terrible. Like, even though God took care of him when he was sold into slavery, it was still, it had to be like a terribly shocking thing to go through. So now he's bound and put into prison. Yeah, but so far, Joseph has really set an incredible example for us when he's gone through tribulation, but he's done, what they say. He bloomed where he was planted. He remembered who he was. He maintained his identity throughout all of this. People tried to break his identity. His brothers tried to break his identity. They tried to break him. They tried to enslave him. But in his slavery, he just became powerful. He just became more powerful. And then this woman, she's trying to break him because she's obviously a broken person. She's a weak woman who needs to always have her way in order to feel complete, in order to feel, she doesn't have real confidence, sadly. So now she's going to punish Joseph because she's empty inside. But, verse 21, but the Lord was with Joseph and showed him mercy and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. Whew, and that's be careful about people. And there's so many people who are empty. They're empty in this world, and they will project their projection machines. They're hurt. They're alone. They have no real confidence, no real security. They're going to throw everything at you to try to get it to stick, just like they did with Joseph. They tried to throw everything at him. They tried to make him as empty and insecure as they were. But Joseph just was full. He was full of God's love. He was full of God's mercy. They couldn't pour that into him. They couldn't, the projection machines all around couldn't pour their poison into Joseph. And that's how we have to be. We have to be like Joseph. But the Lord was with Joseph. And the Lord is with us. And we have to remember that at all times. Especially when we're being attacked. But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him mercy and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. And the keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners that were in the prison, and whatsoever they did there, he was the doer of it. The keeper of the prison looked not to anything that was under his hand, because the Lord was with him, and that which he did, the Lord made it to prosper. So here's Joseph being put into prison, but obviously we could see that he's still full of hope. He's still full of energy and light. He's not getting depressed. He's not he's not just refusing to do. Oh, you said something. Imagine that you had this dream of greatness, but you don't have the roadmap to get there. That must have been very upsetting to him. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, that's how it is with us humans. That's such a great point. Because, yeah, we're going through all kinds of things just like Joseph, and we don't know where we're really headed. We might have some ideas, but we don't really know fully. We have to trust. And that is what is so cool about Joseph, is that he He trusted God. He just did what he had to do. He prophesied to his brothers and his parents, which I'm sure he loved them all, especially his parents. And, he had to tell them, y'all are going to bow down to me. Which I think on some level he might have liked to say to his brothers, but I'm sure that was difficult to say to his parents. But of course it was probably difficult to say to his brothers, just knowing how much they hated him already. But yeah, he did. He had to do it. He didn't know where this was going, but God gave him this prophecy. And so he was a prophet. And he had to do, a prophet can't not, the bones burn up inside. Can't hold it inside. Have to do God's will, And that was what Joseph did, always. Always doing God's will. And then, and then he's sold into slavery. Maybe he felt like, oh, God's will is being done. I'm in this great situation. This is awesome, People are under me. Maybe this is my dream being fulfilled, I'm the boss here. Everyone's under me. But nope, it was even greater than that. But then he goes to prison. Maybe for a split second there he was like, wait a minute. Yeah, this doesn't seem right. I haven't done anything wrong here again, and I've been doing God's will, and God's been blessing me, and now I'm going to prison? But then in the prison, everything he did prospered, and he just kept that, he was that light, and people saw that light. Everywhere he went, Joseph had that light. He had that light of Christ. And so he was trusted. People knew that Joseph was going to do the right thing. So he became the keeper of the prison. He became his right hand man, and basically he was the boss of everything again. Like everywhere he goes, he's just the boss of everything. Okay, chapter 40. Let's see what's going to happen next. Can you guess? It says, and it came to pass after these things that the butler of the king of Egypt and his baker had offended the Lord, the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh was wroth against two of his officers, against the chief of the butlers and against the chief of the bakers. And he put them in ward in the house of the captain of the guard, into the prison, the place where Joseph was bound. And the captain of the guard charged Joseph with them, and he served them, and they continued a season in ward. And they dreamed a dream, both of them, each man his dream in one night, each man according to the interpretation of his dream, the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt, which were bound in the prison. And Joseph came in unto them in the morning, and looked upon them, and behold, they were sad. And he asked Pharaoh's officers that were with him in the ward of his Lord's house, saying, Wherefore look ye so sadly today? And they said unto him, We have dreamed a dream, and there is no interpreter of it. And Joseph said unto them, Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me them, I pray you. And there's that confidence. I tell you, that confidence and integrity. He's just like, God can interpret. He wasn't ever thinking about, oh, can I do this? What can I do? He was like, God can do this. And verse 9 says, And the chief butler told his dream to Joseph, and said to him, In my dream, behold, a vine was before me. And in the vine there were 3 branches, and it was as though it budded, and her blossoms shot forth, and the clusters thereof brought forth ripe grapes. And Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and I gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand. And Joseph said unto him, This is the interpretation of it. The 3 branches are 3 days. And within 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up thine head, and restore thee unto thy place. and thou shalt deliver Pharaoh's cup into his hand after the former manner when thou wast his butler. But think on me when it shall be well with thee, and show kindness, I pray thee, unto me, and make mention of me unto Pharaoh, and bring me out of this house. For indeed I was stolen away out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also have I done nothing that they should put me into the dungeon. When the chief baker saw that the interpretation was good, he said unto Joseph, I also was in my dream, and behold, I had 3 white baskets on my head. And so here I think Joseph is thinking like, okay, this guy, obviously he's in there, he's wrongly accused. So he's going to actually go back up and he's going to return to his former, to his former job. And so he's like, I'm down here, I haven't done anything wrong, so please remember me. So he's trying to, say, hey, we're the same. So then the next interpretation, in verse 17, it says, And in the uppermost basket there was of all manner of bakements for Pharaoh, and the birds did eat them out of the basket upon my head. And Joseph answered and said, This is the interpretation thereof. 3 baskets are 3 days, yet within 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up thy head from off thee, and shall hang thee on a tree, and the birds shall eat thy flesh from off thee. And it came to pass on the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, that he made a feast unto all his servants, and lifted up the head of the chief butler and the chief baker among his servants. And he restored the chief butler unto his butlership again, and he gave the cup unto Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet did not the chief butler remember Joseph, but forgat him. That's wild that he was somehow able to forget. Wow. But I guess that was kind of a whirlwind moment where he was just probably so happy because he, there was a chance he was going to get executed. And he might not have fully believed Joseph's interpretation of the dream. So he was probably just pretty beside himself. Although it's still it's difficult to imagine him forgetting that. Okay, chapter 41. And it came to pass at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh dreamed, and behold, he stood by the river. And behold, there came up out of the river 7 well-favored kine, and fat-fleshed, and they fed in a meadow. And behold, 7 other kine came up after them out of the river, ill-favored and lean-fleshed, and stood by the other kine upon the brink of the river. And the ill-favored and lean-fleshed kine did eat up the 7 well-favored and fat kine. So Pharaoh awoke. And he slept and dreamed the 2nd time, and behold, 7 ears of corn came up upon one stalk, rank and good. And behold, 7 thin ears, and blasted with the east wind, sprung up after them. And the 7 thin ears devoured the 7 rank and full ears. And Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream. And it came to pass in the morning that his spirit was troubled, and he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt, and all the wise men thereof. And Pharaoh told them his dream, but there was none that could interpret them unto Pharaoh. Then spake the chief butler unto Pharaoh, saying, I do remember my faults this day. And Pharaoh was wroth with his servants, and put me in ward in the captain of the guard's house, both me and the chief baker. And we dreamed a dream in one night, I and he. We dreamed, each man according to the interpretation of his dream. And there was there with us a young man in Hebrew, servant to the captain of the guard. And we told him, and we interpreted to us our dreams. And he interpreted us our dreams. And to each man according to his dream did he interpret. So, I'm just going to say that Joseph ends up going to basically rule over everything in Pharaoh's house because he interprets the dream. And yeah, there's 7 lean years. I mean, there's 7 like years of abundance, and then there's gonna be the 7 lean years. And Joseph just takes over that whole operation. Oh wow! And then he has 2 sons. He calls the name of the firstborn Manasseh. For God hath made me forget all my toil in all my father's house. That's verse 51. And the name of the second he called Ephraim. For God hath caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. Oh, verse 42 of chapter 41 is a 6-7. I mean, it's just a part of the fulfillment of the prophecy. And Pharaoh took off his ring from his hand and put it upon Joseph's hand and arrayed him in vestures of fine linen and put a gold chain about his neck. So Joseph was over all the house of Egypt. And yeah, he's really living a blessed life. Oh yeah, and of course he also marries I can't remember, some powerful woman, probably one of Pharaoh's daughters. And now I will read chapter 42, which is a 6-7 chapter. Big time. Okay, it says, Now when Jacob saw that there was corn in Egypt, Jacob said unto his sons, Why do ye look one upon another? And he said, Behold, I have heard that there is corn in Egypt. Get you down thither, and buy for us from thence, that we may live and not die. And Joseph's 10 brethren went down to buy corn in Egypt. Yeah, so basically 42 is just it's a 6-7 because it's all of this, the prophecy that's coming true, and like it's what all this was leading to. It all comes to a head now. This is the dream. This is the dream finally happening. Now it's going to be fulfilled, and of course now he knows exactly what his dreams meant. It says in verse 4, But Benjamin, Joseph's brother, Jacob, sent not with his brethren, for he said, Lest peradventure mischief befall him. And the sons of Israel came to buy corn among those that came, for the famine was in the land of Canaan, and Joseph was the governor over the land, and he it was that sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brethren came, and bowed down themselves before him with their faces to the earth. And Joseph saw his brethren, and he knew them, but made himself strange unto them, and spake roughly unto them. And he said unto them, Whence come ye? And they said, From the land of Canaan to buy food. So that's a 6-7 there too. Joseph was the governor. He was selling food. He was running the whole thing, and so now here they bowed down to him. But Joseph knew them. He knew who they were, but they didn't know who he was. So he was, fulfilling this prophecy. He's in this powerful position, and they have no idea who he is. So he's speaking roughly to them, which I think he probably enjoyed a lot of this stuff that goes on. So he puts a cup in Benjamin's sack when Benjamin comes, and then he's like, whoever has my cup, I'm going to take him as a slave. And then, let's see, he takes one of the brothers. But I have to get on here. I have to get off here. I'm getting tired. I am actually getting tired, so maybe I'll finish this like tomorrow. I'll probably just start over on 42 and finish it because I am actually getting tired. Amazingly. Yeah, I think I'm kind of getting back on my old schedule, so maybe I'll just like stay up all night and read as much as I would love to. Oh man, forgot everything is in God's timing. Oh yes. Yeah, good night, Larry. Thanks for coming, and it was really nice reading to you and talking to you. I hope you have a good night, and God bless you. Bye.